Think about the last time you walked into a room full of people you didn't know. There's a half second where your brain does something automatic. It scans faces. Reads posture. Decides, before you've consciously thought about anything, whether this is fine. And then you do the ritual, the handshake, the nod, the slightly too loud, "Hi, nice to meet you." That awkward little dance is one of the oldest and most dangerous things humans do. It's older than nations, older than money, older than farming, older than any language currently spoken on Earth. And for most of our history, it wasn't awkward. It was lethal. Because for hundreds of thousands of years, the appearance of a stranger on the horizon was the single most consequential event that could happen to your group. So here's the question. When two bands of humans who had never seen each other met for the first time, what actually happened? Did they fight? Trade? Marry? And how on earth did anyone decide? To understand how strange our answer is, you have to look at what our closest relatives do. Because they solved this problem a long time ago, and their solution is horrifying. Jane Goodall's team at GAM, in Tanzania, watched a chimpanzee community split into two groups in the early 1970s. What followed over the next few years is now called the GAM Chimpanzee War. The males of one group systematically patrolled their border, moved silently in coordinated parties, and when they caught a member of the other side alone, they killed him. Over 4 years, they wiped the neighboring community out. That's the baseline for a social ape. A stranger is not a trading partner. A stranger is a target. And here's the thing, humans are absolutely capable of that. We have done it, over and over, and I'll get to the evidence in a minute. But we are also capable of something no other primate on Earth can do. You can sit on a plane, wedged between two total strangers, at 30,000 feet, for 11 hours. And nothing happens. You share an armrest. Maybe a joke about the food. Try that with chimpanzees. You would not land with the same number of passengers. So somewhere in our past, we cracked a problem no other ape has ever solved. How to meet a stranger and not kill him. And the earliest evidence we have of first contact isn't a weapon or a settlement. It's a genome. Because for tens of thousands of years, our species wasn't the only kind of human around. As modern humans spread out of Africa, they walked into a world that already had people in it, Neanderthals across Europe and the Near East, Denisovans somewhere east. Different bodies. Different faces. And at some point, groups of them stood looking at each other across a valley. We know exactly what happened next, because it's written in you. If your ancestry runs outside Africa, you're carrying somewhere around 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA right now. And in some populations, a little Denisovan on top. That isn't a rumor. That's chemistry. And occasionally the evidence gets startlingly personal. There's a jawbone from a cave in Romania called Pestra Cuoas, from a man who lived around 40,000 years ago. When his genome was read, it turned out he had so much Neanderthal ancestry that one of his direct ancestors, a great-great-grandparent, roughly, had been a Neanderthal. Then there's a bone fragment from Denisova cave in Siberia, studied by researchers including Vivian Slon and Svante Pabo. It belonged to a teenage girl who lived around 90,000 years ago. Her mother was a Neanderthal. Her father was a Denisovan. She's not a metaphor for first contact. She's the result of it. But interbreeding is one moment. Keeping the peace is a different problem entirely, and this is where humans invented something genuinely new. They invented the gift. Go looking in the archaeological record and you keep finding small, pretty, useless things traveling enormous distances. Beads made from ostrich eggshell, ground and drilled and strung, turning up hundreds of kilometers from where the shell originated. Seashells found deep inland. Objects with no practical function at all, moving across landscapes on foot. Why bother? The anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent years with the Jew/Hoansi in the Kalahari, documenting a system called Hexero. Here's how it works. You build up a network of exchange partners scattered across a huge area, people in other bands, often far away. You give them gifts. Beads, arrows, small items. They give you gifts back, months or years later. The objects themselves are basically worthless. The objects were never the point. Because when your waterhole dries up and your area fails, and eventually it will, you don't have to arrive at a stranger's camp as a desperate beggar. You arrive at a partner's camp, holding a relationship you've been carefully feeding for a decade. And they take you in. Because next time it'll be them. Here's what makes this so important. Trade didn't start because someone needed a better rock. Trade started as a survival technology for dealing with other humans. A gift is a message that says, I am investing in you being alive next year. Every trade deal, every treaty, every alliance in human history is running that same ancient software. And once that system existed, the goods moved unbelievably far. Obsidian is the giveaway, because volcanic glass can be chemically fingerprinted to the exact volcano it came from. At French Thigh Cave in Greece, archaeologists found obsidian from the island of Melos, over 100 kilometers away across open sea, from roughly 11,000 years ago and possibly earlier. Melos was never connected to the mainland. Which means people were putting to sea in boats, in the Stone Age, to get glass from an island. Obsidian from Anatolia turns up hundreds of kilometers south. Stone from a single mountain ends up scattered across half a region, passed hand to hand between groups who mostly never met each other. That's not one epic journey. That's a chain of thousands of individual first contacts that went well. But I promised you the other side. And it's grim. At Jebel Sahaba in Sudan, a cemetery excavated by Fred Wendorf holds people who died around 13,000 years ago, riddled with stone projectile points, many bearing healed injuries from earlier attacks. Recent reanalysis suggests it wasn't one great battle, it was raid after raid after raid, over generations. At Natorik, near Lake Turkana in Kenya, a team led by Marta Mirazanlar found the remains of around 27 people from roughly 10,000 years ago, lying where they fell. Crushed skulls. Obsidian blades still embedded in bone. Bound hands. Including women and children. At Talheim in Germany, from about 7,000 years ago, 30-odd farmers were killed with axe blows and dumped in a pit together. So the honest answer to fight, trade, or intermarry is yes. All three. Sometimes with the same neighbors in the same century. Which is exactly why humans built rituals to manage the terror of it. Herodotus describes a practice the Carthaginians used on the West African coast. They'd unload their goods on the beach, light a smoke signal, and return to the ships. The locals would come, inspect the goods, leave a quantity of gold beside them, and withdraw. The Carthaginians would come back. If the gold seemed fair, they took it and sailed. If not, they retreated to the ships and waited for more. An entire economy, conducted without the two sides ever standing face to face. Silent trade. First contact with the risk engineered out of it. And in the Trobriand Islands, documented by Bronislaw Malinowski, communities ran the Kula ring, shell necklaces and armbands sailed for hundreds of miles between islands, one type circulating one direction around the ring, the other type circulating the opposite way. You can't keep them. You have to pass them on. All that effort, all those dangerous canoe voyages, to move ornaments in a circle forever. Because the circle is the treaty. As long as the shells keep moving, we are not enemies. So here's the full picture. Chimpanzees met a stranger and killed him. Then humans met a stranger and, sometimes, had a child with him, and that child is still in your DNA. Then somebody handed over a bead they didn't need, and invented insurance. Then obsidian crossed the sea. Then, yes, the arrows flew at Natorik and the axes at Talheim, and they've never really stopped. And then we got clever, and left our goods on a beach, and lit a fire, and walked away, so we could deal with each other without having to look at each other. Which brings us back to that room full of people you don't know. The handshake, the nod, the nice to meet you. That's not politeness. That's the last surviving relic of the single hardest problem our ancestors ever solved. A tiny ritual that says I am not a threat, and I am betting that you aren't either. You perform it a dozen times a week without noticing. They performed it with their lives on the line. Every city, every trade route, every alliance on this planet is built on the same fragile bet. That the stranger walking towards you might be worth knowing. We are the only animal that ever decided to find out. If you like this kind of thing, the very old roots of very ordinary moments. There's plenty more waiting around here.